Hi, everyone. This is Nina Sadowski, Program Director of NYU Los Angeles. I want to begin by thanking everyone for taking the time to come today for what I hope will be an inspiring and informative session during what is a very challenging and difficult time right now. And I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that this country is in pain. We are all in pain. And it is my hope that it is an inflection point for forward motion that is a healing of the, not only of the pandemic, but the systemic racial injustice. But that brings me to why we're here, which is to look forward and look forward in a hopeful way. I just want to, for those of you that don't know me, give you a little bit of my background. While I am indeed the program director of NYU LA, I'm also a creative myself. I'm a television and film producer and a novelist. I will have my fourth thriller released this August. I'm working in development of two other projects, television projects. So in many respects, I am right here along with all of you. And in the course of my career, I've had to rely on the things that I think you'll hear our panelists talk about today, which are flexibility, resilience, out-of-the-box thinking, determination, self-care, and also collective care, which brings me to my panelists, who I'm going to introduce. But I also wanted to just make an announcement that we've decided to make our last discovery session event, the Q&A with Franklin Leonard on July 2nd, also a free event for anyone who would like to attend. We wanted to make these sessions as accessible to everyone as possible, while at the same time covering our costs, and realize that we could make that session available free for all of you. So I hope you will also register for that. But to bring us to today, I want to introduce our incredible panelists. And as I do, they should come on, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, just give them a little background about what aspect of the business they work in and what their current job is before we begin to dig deeper into their paths and how they came to be where they are now. This, as I think I said before, this group was asked specifically because they graduated into the last Great Recession, recession that began in 2008 and affected us significantly for several years to follow. These are all people who have been, and I know many of you from looking at the registrants, many of you are graduating and wondering, what the hell do I do now? How do I move forward in this creative career that I've been promising myself and working towards and polishing my craft? What the hell am I going to do? So we're going to hopefully get some answers from our panelists. So I'm going to start with Ada Westfall. Ada, would you like to join in and say hello, introduce yourselves, and give us a little background on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hi. My name's Ada Westfall. I use she, her pronouns, just to put that out there. I graduated in the class of '08 from Tisch. I went to, for theater as an actor. So I went to the studio called Cap 21 that is now no longer, I think has been replaced by the new studio. And then did a little bit of time there, and then went to Playwrights Horizons, where I actually ran into, when he was still just a teacher there, Ruben Polendo, who now is the head of Tisch undergraduate acting, and I've been a member of his theater company ever since then, since 2006. And in the meantime, I sort of started out trying to be an actor, but I've also been a musician since I was 10 years old. And so at some point, people started asking me to either, compose for their shows or play in their shows or music direct their shows. And I started pursuing that a lot more. And so while I'm still in theater, I kind of I'm sort of centered around music as it exists in theater. And that can mean a lot of different things. So everything from like the work I do with Ruben's company, which is very experimental and, you know, devised and to put it plainly weird, all the way to, as an example, when the pandemic hit, I was installing a dinner theater circus extravaganza sort of big spectacle show on Virgin Voyage's new cruise ship, brand new cruise ship. So I watched this all unfold from aboard a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So all that is to say is I work on all these sort of different kinds of scales and commercial and less commercial and, you know, so on and so forth. And that will often end up meaning that I take, I'll be anything from just an actor to just a musician to anything that blends those things. So I'm kind of a flexible beast.
Thank you. Before we move on to our next panelist, I realized I made a terrible error and I didn't thank both my team at NYU LA as well as Lily Hung and Joanna Puglisi, who have all killed themselves to help us put this together. So I'm very grateful. I forgot that bit of business, my gratitude, which is where I should have led. And I also wanted to ask that if you have questions, either generally or for particular panelists, that you use the Q&A function of Zoom to register those questions, and we will get to them as many as possible. Okay, so next I'm going to go to Estefania Sprengel. And I hope I didn't butcher her name.
No, you did amazing. Thank you for taking the time to pronounce my name. Hi guys. I am class of '08 from the film and television program. While I was in school, I was very concerned about what my student debt was going to look like. So I took a lot of classes and I did not focus on anything. I just took everything under the sun, any technical skill, which thank God served me well after the '08 crisis. I'm originally from Guayaquil, Ecuador. I'm a native Spanish speaker, I'm sorry. And that also contributed to just finding a niche in creative marketing, which has been my bread and butter since I started my career. That's kind of where I found the most stability and ability to do anything under the sun creatively, which is not something that I initially thought it was a career to begin with. At NYU, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do direct, I'm going to produce, and now I'm a producer, but of everything under the sun. I've done so many different things under the marketing umbrella. I mean, that's all I think about. I don't know if we're going to go over like our different career trajectories afterwards, or
yeah, we'll talk about that a little longer. I just wanted to know like where you started, what you're doing now. Okay, so Matthew Morganthaler, would you like to join us?
Hi, everybody. Hey, Matthew Morganthaler, and I graduated, or technically graduated in 2010, but finished NYU in 2009 for film and TV production. And right now, professionally, I'm a line producer and a DGA unit production manager for films, TV, commercials, music videos, everything under the sun. And, you know, I'm sure we'll dive into our lengthy, long stories in a few minutes, but the quick summary of my story is finished NYU in 2009, moved to Los Angeles in 2010, came out here dead set to write and direct, which I think is the aspiration for the vast majority of film and TV production majors at Tisch. And ultimately discovered that I actually liked line producing and production managing more than the writing and the directing. So started focusing on that several years after graduating, which I can get into more later on.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Nice to see you. David Smithyman is our next guest.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My trajectory was similar. I went to dramatic writing at Tisch, and I graduated in 2008. I was not a really great student, but I went into stand-up after for a while because it was a recession and you had to kind of make your own way. And in 2014, I moved to Los Angeles from New York and started working on a show called Fresh Off the Boat for ABC, which I was on for five seasons, I think. And then I moved to a new show for Hulu called Love, Victor, which hasn't come out yet. And now currently I'm on a new show for NBC called Young Rock, which is like the story of the young Rock, like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. So we're doing that. And then in between that, I've done a couple of little things. Like I went to Canada to work on to write jokes for a Netflix movie called Always Be My Maybe. And currently I am working on a new show pilot for Peacock. And ignore my Peloton behind me. It's not a brag that I have one. That's just where it is because my house is very small.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing both your exercise equipment and your square footage. And now we will move on to our last but no means least addition, Tristian Goick.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. My name is Christianne Goick. I'm a independent animator, motion graphics editor, and cartoonist. I grew up in New York City and wanted to study film, so I went to Tisch School of the Arts. Also majored in film and television production with a concentration in animation. I did my thesis film as an animated film. I graduated in 2009, and I got like a really great internship at an animation studio, local city studio, very exciting. And then it was the recession and the studio like collapsed in like a month and my internship was over. So that was the beginning of my fun little freelance career that eventually took me to today, where I'm a character rigger at the cartoon show Our Cartoon President on Showtime. It's Stephen Colbert's animated cartoon show about the presidency. We are on season 3 right now. And I was excited and pleased to get this email about graduating in a recession.
Well, your story about getting that internship and then having the place collapse and your internship collapse is a great launching point, I think, for my next question, which I want to put out to all of the panelists, and if you could in turn answer it. So when you were coming out, into the world, you went into school that was a very different economic environment than the one you graduated into. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about when you were in school, what your expectations were of what you were going to be doing after you graduated, and then also how reality hit you, the same way it's hitting what I believe is probably a large majority of our listeners today. Like, what happened? You thought you had your dream thing lined up, Tristian, and then the place went under. Does anyone else have a similar story about how expectations were lost or adjusted? Yeah, Estefania.
So prior to graduation in the 2007, I partnered up with a classmate and we formed an LLC to make a TV show. Her dad had an agency and they were looking to make a TV show for the Chinese American market. And since we were in film school, he's like, hey, why don't you guys produce it? And so we shot it, we edited, we did everything, graphics, you name it, just the two of us. And so while we were still in school, in our last year, in our senior year, I almost didn't graduate because I had to finish the season 1 of this entire show. We were delivering it and we were rushing to push it out. they said that, okay, we're going to have season 2 and season 3 lined up for you guys to shoot. And that was like straight out of like after graduation, it was supposed to happen. And so, okay, this is great. We have lined up 2 seasons and we were already signing DVD deals and looking for vendors and just getting that in motion. And then 2008, 2009 happened and all the funding was drained. We don't have money for any of these for seasons 2 or season 3. And just that whole entire project went away. And that was like the whole reason why we even had a company. Again, with the student loan part, they were coming. So I had to forget that the dream of having my own company, having my own production company and creating content, and I had to find a job. So there were no jobs in the entertainment industry for people that were just coming out that had no experience, because everybody else in the industry was hanging on dearly to their own positions, and they were massive layoffs everywhere. So I had to take a job as a video technician for the city of New York, because I happened to have had technical skills as a TA when I was at NYU, that I was repairing the equipment, and that kind of, it was semi-related, but I just had to take any kind of job, and that was what was available. So yeah, I thought that I was going to be this content creator, show runner, producer, and having my own company I had to get a job. And that, I mean, diverted me a little bit, but in the end I found a path to creating content, but just on the marketing side.
Anyone else like to take that one? No? Oh, David, okay, go ahead.
I just want to say that I like for TV and like TV writing, I feel like even when it's not a recession, people are like, you probably won't get a job, and then you have to go, oh man, I have to do something. I have to work really hard. So it's like, I feel like with an industry like that, where jobs are already kind of scarce and hard to get, when the recession hit, I remember people were like, well, you know, what do we do now? And I think it kind of forced you to be creative in your job search, you know, where you had your dream job of what you wanted to do, but if that wasn't available all of a sudden, and so you kind of had to find something else. You had to have a plan B.
Mm-hmm. So any pieces of advice? Oh, Ada, do you want to weigh in? And as an addition to that, any piece of advice about how to find that plan B or what it should look like? Ada?
Yeah, sure. I think I can actually do that with
Knit those together
questions
for us. Okay, good.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe it would be interesting to offer a perspective of when I got the email about doing this, I stopped and went, oh, did I graduate in a recession? Oh, I guess I did. Because my expectation going out into the world was to be a struggling poor actor with no credits and nothing, nothing to really grab me some fabulous lucrative gig right off the bat. So I kind of walked into the world ready to encounter that. And indeed, that's what I did encounter. I was auditioning a lot, couldn't get arrested. In fact, to date in my professional career, I have never once auditioned into a part. Somehow I'm still here. But what that forced, and you know, this is I think to sort of piggyback on what David was saying, it forced me to get creative. And I think perhaps that was what your second question is sort of getting at, which is I had to find a way to generate work. And by that, I mean both work, you know, a job, but also work, you know, sort of properties and music and things that I could put out into the world that then somebody could identify me with. And somebody might go, hey, that weird thing you did at Joe's Pub was cool. Why don't you come do this? Which turned out to be a really great strategy. Since I was writing songs of my own, I literally developed, I was also in a previous gender at the time. This didn't happen until about 3.5 years ago. I I invented this persona named Mink Vodka, and it was very like punk rock cabaret. And I sort of wrote and sort of scrappily recorded this entire album, and then went and played it at Joe's Pub by pulling strings with, you know, fellow graduate, my friend Joe Lampert, I think was working in the offices there, and so she talked to the right people and kind of got me a slot that I kind of had no right having, and we did it, and that of course branched out into lots of other things, but obviously to survive, I think I had applied to some things that were something you mentioned was like industry adjacent jobs. Couldn't really find one that was that wanted me as much as I wanted it. So I actually settled for working at the Genius Bar at the Apple Store. I did that for a few years. And that actually ended up working a little better than I thought it might. There's a plane overhead. I hope it's not drowning me out. In that I was engaging all the time. I found a gig there that yes, was like fixing people's broken phones, but then was also about teaching some of those classes that they teach in the Apple Store. So I was getting training on different programs, and then I was imparting that knowledge to other people, and that was making interesting connections with the community. So I was kind of doing this double whammy of doing the retail gig that wasn't my favorite and that I was dying to get out of, but, you know, was honing some skills and getting me some new knowledge. And then at the same time, doing friends projects, doing my own projects, being in Ruben's theater company, Theater Me Too, was a huge boon in that you know, that company does at least one big thing every year, usually more. So that was affording me travel opportunities and the chance to be a part of something that was bigger than just what's coming out of my own weird little head, you know?
That's great. I think that, we were talking about this, the panelists and I, before we opened up the webinar, but about how if you can't find a job in the area that you love, that if you can find something that's kind of adjacent to it, the way Ada did, or even the way Estefania did, it was the city, and it was not, creating content, but it was, working with cameras, right? Or, learning skills. And I think that's how you, don't let your soul die while you're, trying to figure out your path, is that you have that combination of, all right, this is what's going to pay my bills, but if I can find something out of that will give me some kind of creative gratitude, or some kind of a new thing that I can learn and use elsewhere, that you can find a value in it that you can't if your soul is just being sucked. Matthew.
Yeah, hey, I just wanted to kind of add to that. I definitely agree with the advice that it's important to try and find a job adjacent if you can. However, from my experience, I found even getting a job adjacent in the beginning to be very hard. So I think
that was your first job after graduation, Matthew?
Well, so for me, I came out to Los Angeles, and to be completely honest, I didn't find a job adjacent that paid me until over a year after living in Los Angeles. For a year, I was interning for free at various places. And to make some money, I was catering, which is, not very adjacent. It's similar to, working at the Genius Bar or something like that. It's having a day job, but sometimes you have to settle for a day job that isn't necessarily, your dream job adjacent. Because I think finding a job like that is actually often very difficult. So while that should be the goal, sometimes that's not quite possible. And I do think that we are now entering a time period where that becomes harder than ever, like it was, 10 years ago. So I think the advice is to, if you can't find a job adjacent, get a day job. If you have to be able to support yourself and make money, you have to get a job. If you can save or don't have to necessarily rush into a day job, that's really great. That's a great advantage that you have. But if you don't have that advantage, you do have to find something like catering or working at the Genius Bar or working wherever. However, when you're doing that, you still need to try ultimately finding a job adjacent, still be trying to interview for those things, but also still be doing your art, whatever that is, whether that's writing, directing, making music or whatever, because ultimately what the art that you're making at night is going to ultimately eventually leapfrog you to where you want to go in the long run. So that's really important, I think, to remember. And is that even, having a day job is super hard. I get it. You come home, you don't want to necessarily write or make music or whatever. You're wiped out, but you do need to push yourself to do that. That's super important. I mean, no matter what position you're trying to get at in the arts, there's ultimately not enough positions for all of us that want to do it. So you do need to be working harder than everybody else that's also trying to get the same jobs that you're trying to get. So that's what I wanted to add, in addition to your comment about getting a job adjacent, that sometimes that's not possible, and you do need to kind of have a more grander plan than just that.
David, you had something you wanted to add about this subject?
Did I?
I thought you did. If not, you could tell us about your first job after graduation.
My first job, I mean, I agree with Matthew that it is hard, to find that thing, find something that's industry sort of adjacent. For me, I'm not good at a lot of stuff, so I can't do most jobs. I'm just not good at things. So I'm good at this one thing. And so I started doing stand-up totally unpaid because I wanted to write comedy, and I didn't have any access to television shows or anything like that. So I just did stand-up, which was like the easiest way of doing that, where it's just you and you just write things and they're generally bad. But you get the chance to go up and fail a bunch of times, which you need to do. And my first job was, I answered an ad on Craigslist for a children's summer camp that where like weird kids would learn how to write jokes and do like their own comedy show at a comedy club. And so I interviewed for that job and ended up doing it. And then I did that job for 6 years, I think.
Wow.
Like a long time, like a really long time.
Sounds like you might have a series in you about that experience.
Yeah, maybe. But it was like that. I at the time I was like, oh, what am I doing? Like, I went to school for writing, and here I am, like in this basement in a comedy club with a bunch of like weird teenagers. But weirdly, looking back on it, it actually really helped me get to where I was, because I had to, it forced me to learn like how to craft a joke and how to write a joke, and the editing process, and like talking to people and communicating ideas that I thought were like communicating my ideas to like a 12-year-old makes you kind of, forces you to have to translate things to people, like how do you get your ideas across? Mm-hmm. And so I think at the end of it, when the 6 years were over, I went straight into a TV job, luckily. But if it hadn't been for those 6 years, I don't think I would have been ready.
Mm. Tristian?
Yeah, I wanted to.
Has Tristian frozen for everyone else, or just me?
I think it's everyone.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, Tristian, we're hoping that you will unfreeze.
Can you see me now?
Oh, yes, you're back. Okay, good. Right. There you are.
So just saying, as a baby-faced animator, we all had the dream of like creating at Disney. or Pixar or something like big time Hollywood like that. And I had internships throughout my years at film school for credit, and they were all really great internships. So the plan was like, get another internship at a studio, and then you'll be so good and they'll hire you after. And that was like a really simple plan that would have worked at any other time. But all of a sudden one day, like I had been kind of following all this stuff on NPR, and then you hear something in the break room, and then just a few weeks into my internship, they said that half the staff had been let go, and talking to people around the industry at the studio and other places, it's like at that time, if there was a job opening, there were more like mature, experienced people who that job was promised to, because they just lost their first support of income for like their family. And it's like they've been animating or working 10 years ahead of you. So like, why would you take that job from them? So it was very difficult at that time. But what it did force me to do was open myself up to different kinds of work opportunities. I had some professors at Tisch who brought me in to do side graphics projects on their film. Professor John Kaymaker had his Oscar award-winning animated short, Moon in the Sun, and he brought me on along with another film graduate editor to do special features on his DVD of the short film that he was producing. That stuff was really helpful to sustain me for like the year or so that I spent after graduating, like working for small amounts of money on only creative projects I felt like I deserved or something. And then finally I was like, I need to pay some of these student loans. And I had a friend from animation class, Kendra. She told me that her motion graphics job needed someone to cover her during Christmas break, because she already booked her trip and they need someone there at the news place all the time. And that was my start to working at Thomson Reuters, the big news company in Times Square, which turned out to be like a very interesting but financial news-oriented job, but that definitely gave me a professional start in working in motion graphics, and then eventually learning more about video editing and other aspects of production.
So you took a step to the side that brought you back, sort of.
Yeah, and I felt really guilty because it wasn't creative, or like I wasn't pouring paint all over the table or something. But it did turn out to be very interesting, and I learned a lot of new skills from it. Like in documentary work, I discovered I had some passion for that. So I'm really fortunate to have that, because I ended up staying there for several years, which enabled me. It was a 9-to-5 job because of the markets. So you just had to be there early to get the daily show graphics out. But since I got out early, I had a lot of time to go to animation screenings around the city, and I became very involved in film festivals and doing volunteer work there. You mentioned Craigslist. That was one of the first jobs I found. The New York International Children's Film Festival was looking for volunteers to hand out tickets and popcorn. And now over the years, that festival has produced their own production company, which has covered some Oscar-nominated films already. So it was a great opportunity for me to meet people. And sorry, just the last thing I want to mention is that because of all the volunteer work I've been doing, I became president of an international animation club called ASIFA. Our name is ASIFA East, and we are a group of animators that work in New York City and the tri-state area. And we have chapters all over the world. And because I was able to find this non-creative job that enabled me to go out and meet people in the city at industry events.
I want to dial it back to something based on a listener question, dial it back to something that you raised before, Tristian, which is that you were talking about these internships you got. And the question was, were these paid or unpaid internships? Because I know that's a lot of times people starting out are, you know, given the advice, go intern, but not everyone can afford.
Oh, it's totally different now from when I graduated in 2009. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's like a new law or bill that's been passed to like make sure that these interns get paid for their time. But as was the policy at the time, I was doing it for credits. I think I got like a per diem at one documentary place, and I just like bought a sandwich or whatever. But I have no regrets. I never felt like I was doing extra work that I wasn't getting compensated for. And I found my first internships through the NYU Alumni Center, who that whole process of like writing essays about your personal experiences, like after 1 week at the internship, I remember that very well.
So what I'm hearing from all of you is that you found a day job or a related job. You found something that sustained you initially because the path that you had envisioned wasn't necessarily there. So can you talk about the moment when you felt, this is a job that's taking me back on track. This is the thing where now I'm finally going where I want to go. When you left Reuters or you left the New York City, how did you get that first job where you felt, now I'm back on path? What was it and how did you get it? Who would like to take that first? Estefania, thank you.
So while I was being a video technician, bringing it back to the internship part, I remember my senior year, I was the only one that hadn't done an internship yet. So I hurried and where can I find? And I, like the big places where everybody was interning, we're not taking any more interns. So I found a post-production VFX house that they just needed bodies. And I didn't know much about After Effects. And they took me, they laughed at my reel at first. And then I started really learning video effects and animation and compositing and all of that stuff. So while I was being a video technician, I was also gigging a lot. I didn't say no to anyone. Like every friend that came to me, it's like, hey, I need a sound person. I will come in with my boom. Hey, I need a camera person. I will go in the camera. Oh, we need graphics for whatever. So I continued to do, for the most part, favors everywhere. And one of my friends from school, Ben Dwork, he had been working at a place called NYC Company, which was it's the Tourism Bureau of New York City. And I was in the New York City Do It, which is like I don't know, there's a channel, like they have their own channel, New York City has. And he asked me one day if I could do a couple of shoots for his thing, for his work that he couldn't cover. So I went in and they liked my work. And when he was ready to move on, he recommended me for that position. And he was a video editor / camera person for NYC Company, so doing the marketing stuff. And so I applied for that job, and that's effectively what propelled me. And I felt like, okay, now I'm finally doing what I like to do, which is I'm being paid to edit, I'm being paid to do animations, I'm being paid to shoot. And that was so great because those were the things that I loved doing at school, which was learning technical things, and the creative will come. So my favorite thing was that at NYU, a friend that I made at NYU is the person that recommended me for this position once he left. So that took me off.
Okay. How about Matthew? What was your transition into where you are now? What was the thing that took you back on path?
Well, I'm struggling to decide where to start. I guess I'll go back to the beginning. I think as we've kind of all been talking about, step one, after you graduate is kind of finding your footing. I think that's what I would call it. It's, it's landing either in staying in New York or landing in LA or whatever city you decide to move to, starting to, meet people, create a community around yourself, kind of like Tristian was talking about, and also just like, be able to find something to make you survive, like get a day job or whatever. And then step two is I think finding that job where, okay, this is actually hopefully adjacent to your career path, and you get it. And now you see yourself sort of more moving forward towards that ultimate career that you're aiming for. Now, of course, everything in step one also helps build upon step two, and step two, helps you build further. But I guess for me, it definitely took a long time to get to that square two, where now I felt like I was actually getting paid for a job that was sort of adjacent to my career aspirations at the time, which at the time was writing and directing. Now, when I finally got that job, I continued, which was an assistant job at Sony Pictures. And then I did that for a year. And then for 2 years, I was assistant to a commercial director. So those were career adjacent jobs. But for me, I ultimately discovered that the thing that ultimately helped me in the long term was actually the thing I did on the side all along. It was the still doing my art at night thing. And for me, that was still working in production. So during this whole time, where I'm in stage one, trying to find my footing, and then stage two, finding my career adjacent job, I still was doing my side art, I guess you could say. And that was working on USC films, UCLA films, AFI films. I kind of was lucky to fall into those communities. And basically I would go to everyone and go, hey, listen, I have some experience in production managing. I can do this for you. And so a lot of people took me up on that. And I didn't get paid for it. And I kind of did it on, secretly while I was doing my day job, and I would do it on weekends and everything. But ultimately because I never stopped doing that ultimately led to me discovering that that's actually what I like doing the most. And in the longevity of my career, that's what helped me the most do what I do today.
How about David? Did you just walk away from the weird teenagers in the basement and find yourself fresh on the boat? That seems implausible to me as a leap. So I'd like you to get us a little more granular in there, please.
Well, I was doing stand-up a lot. That's what I was mostly doing. And then I had been working that for a while, and then I was part of an NBC stand-up competition that took me out to Los Angeles. The finals were in Los Angeles. So I went and performed on this show, and because it was Los Angeles, the audience was all industry people or whatever. And my friend, actually my best friend from NYU, from dramatic writing, he was already working in LA as a TV writer, and he brought his managers to the show. And so I met with them after and signed with them. But they were like, we don't do stand-up. We're not stand-up managers. We just do we're literary managers. So we just do scripts. So if you want to be a stand-up, we're not for you. But if you want to be a screenwriter, then we're the place. You have to go write a pilot, and then we'll help you get a job. And so that's what I did. So I wrote a pilot, and then it got into the hands of this Nanashka Khan, who is this cool lady who created Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23 and Fresh Off the Boat and a bunch of other stuff. And she became one of my closest friends and mentors, and I've pretty much worked with her ever since.
And was that get into her hands through your representation or through another means?
Through my representation. So getting a manager helped me get my work to the right people. But it also, I think the best piece of advice I ever got from a writing professor at dramatic writing was don't submit your stuff until it is ready. You only get one chance basically to make a first impression on somebody.
Totally endorse that piece of advice.
Yeah, it's so true.
Say again?
I just said it's rung so true for me. If I had if I had sent her a script when I just graduated, it would be terrible. You know, I wouldn't have been ready yet.
So how about you, Ada? What took you out of the Genius Store when we were able to say, okay, I'm not an Apple employee anymore, I am an artist?
Well, kind of a big leap of faith, which was that, well, it's funny, you know, I think my career then and now is all based, I think, you know, because it functions so primarily in theater, it's all based in really short gigs. Like I'm hearing people talk about, like, I was, you know, I worked on this at this place for a year and this place for, you know, and my gigs last anywhere from a night to a couple months to, so I, you know, it's always been one thing to the other. And so it actually, I got to the point where the jobs I was getting outside of the Apple Store were making it impossible to work at the Apple Store. I would, you know, basically those two lives were starting to become so incompatible that, I mean, I was getting in trouble at the Apple Store. I remember I finally had like gotten to like, I remember a boss sat me down and said, I'm going to give you some good news and some bad news. He said, you did this interview and you got promoted to, you know, lead creative or whatever the position was at the Genius Bar. And he was like, so that's great. Congratulations. Also, you have been absent from work so many times that we are not giving you that promotion. And I was like, okay. Right in that, it's also funny. It was interesting to hear you talk about, I don't know, going through like big personal upheavals, you know, aligning as that aligned with big world events, because basically, so like that happened. I didn't get that promotion. It was getting really, really hard to maintain the gig at the Apple Store. I had a girlfriend who dumped me right then, and my crazy friend Sanaz, who's now who's, you know, becoming a big sort of a bigger and bigger director in New York, sort of avant-garde theater all the time, said, I'm taking a show to the Prague Fringe Festival, and then we're just gonna tour and like workshop this other piece through Krakow and Berlin, and the pay is meager, and do you want to go? And I said, yeah. I was like, I don't want to be at the Apple Store anymore. It's becoming impossible to do this. I just got dumped. I'm gonna have to move out of this apartment anyway. So I actually I quit the Apple Store and went on this crazy tour of Europe. I very ill-advisedly sold all of the stock I had earned at the Apple Store to fund said trip.
Sorry about that.
I'm like, I hope that you're not depending on me for like a sound financial advice in any capacity, because I'm the worst person to ask in the world. So I went on this sort of like traipsing through Europe, did this show at the Prague Fringe Festival, did these other things, and then Ruben's company had recently begun a residency at NYU Abu Dhabi. And so Me Too was putting up a show out there. And it lined up just perfectly. So I went and did that. And so was actually out of the city for like, probably like 4 or 5 months altogether. And thinking that when I came back, I would, you know, beg for my job back and go back to the Apple Store and continue things the way they'd been going. But I think maybe the best way to state this is like my big piece of advice, it has to do with the idea that the people you meet in all of these different places and every gig are so, there's like so much hair in my mouth, are so integral to what happens to you in the future. You know, I mentioned earlier, like I've never auditioned into a part. Like every gig I get is because of people I've already met, and people recommending me via word of mouth, and, you know, so on and so forth, or people I've worked with who we do one thing on some scale, and then 3 years later we've advanced in our careers and they have a bigger opportunity and they think of me and bring me back. And so basically I kind of just took a big leap of faith, and the way I've regarded my progress in my career is I always say that I kind of look after just saying how I can't give, I sold all my stock. I actually think about it like a kind of like a stock market, like a stock ticker. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be that this gig is great and this one's kind of awful, and this one pays well but is not fun, and this one pays crap but was really creatively fulfilling. But as long as the general trend is kind of upward, then I feel like that's how I can gauge that I'm heading for, bigger and better things. And it's funny, it's like, I don't know that I can really cite one moment where I went, now the career is firing. But rather looking back over the past decade or so, I look at the kinds of jobs I was doing at age 21, and I look at the kind of jobs I'm doing now, and there's a marked improvement. The pay is better, the creative fulfillment is better, the creative voice I'm afforded in the room is better.
Well, let me ask you, I'm going to ping off that to ask a more general question. Open this up to everybody, which is, and this comes from a listener question, which is, so when you're starting out, like everyone's talking about the importance of, the friend who brings the managers, or the friend, and that's how you get signed, or the friend who offers you the job, or the, that networking component where you find out someone's going to be on vacation and then you have a job, right? Okay. But how do you balance like if you're trying to make a living on this gig economy, how do you figure out when you're giving away too much for free? Is there a line that you have to draw for yourself? Tristian, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah. Well, that question took a twist at the end there, but definitely when I started going to animation screenings in New York City, I heard about them from my professors, Asifa East, and it was an open workshop where people could bring their in-progress films and show it to everyone and get feedback on their work. So there was this component of the screening where it was like you're watching videos, but then you're also interacting with people and talking to them. Now, all that stuff that you mentioned about the friends, bringing the managers, or getting to the point where you're giving it away too far away, like I wouldn't worry about that right now, because that is long term. Those relationships take a couple months and time to develop. If you keep meeting people who are in the industry, and then they look at your website and your reel or something, and they're like, "Oh, he's pretty cool," and I know that he worked on this thing, and then eventually, at some point down the line, they're going to need. Usually, what happens is like, "Oh, I can't take this work assignment because I'm already booked," but you can submit your resume and try to get it. And I think that those perks and benefits, they come from putting yourself out there in an artistic way, which is the stuff that a lot of people here, Ada and David, have been mentioning. Like, I highly recommend that you try to make your own artwork in your field and concentrate on that, and then also go to events in the city that are available to you. Now, of course, I would say even now during this pandemic shutdown, I'm seeing an explosion of creative social media virtual events that are going on as people are performing on Instagram or doing Facebook shows, all sorts of, and then panels like this. I see them happening in all sorts of great organizations in the city. You'll be educating yourself and you'll be meeting new people. And that's very important when you want to make, especially in the film industry and then across the board.
David, I'm going to address this to you as the fellow writer in this panel. Writers work for free all the time, right? I mean, that's and I think this is something, it's something the Guild tries to address, but, it is, I think, I think, and this comes true for every artist, you want it to be good, right? Not just, right? Not just paid for, right? So I think that, but have you ever felt like, particularly when you were trying to get started, that you were giving away too much for free or felt exploited by that?
I guess I have an interesting perspective, I guess, that I may not apply to other industries. Everyone always told me, like the two things everyone was always saying when I was graduating were get an internship, and which some people have talked about and had good experiences with. I had terrible experiences with interning in TV. It just felt like free labor to me, and I don't think I got a chance ever to do anything creative at that time, because I think, like somebody was saying before, like the people that had their jobs were holding on to it for dear life. So you really were just getting coffee and things like that. So I'm kind of anti-internship a little bit, in that I think you should value yourself and value your work, and know your value. Don't give away stuff for free because you think that you need them more than they need you. I feel like if your work is good, it will stand out, and maybe the time that people tell you to spend interning or networking, which I'm terrible at, and also terrified me when people would say that when we were graduating, is you have to network. I'm like, oh, shit, what am I going to do? I think if you take that time and that energy and you put it into making your work better than other people's and making it as good as it can be and as different and unique as it can be, then that will speak for you. The work will speak for you. And I remember, this is a small thing, but I remember when, to the networking question, because I feel like that's always a big question on everybody's mind when they're graduating. How do you get an agent? How do you get a manager? How do you network? It was for me. There was a girl I remember in my department at the time whose boyfriend was an agent, and her stock in the department went skyrocketed. She became like the captain of the cheerleading team. Everyone was like, oh my God, like her boyfriend's an agent. I feel like don't do that. Like everyone would flock to her and try to go to her barbecues and get a minute with the agent. That I think is stupid. What's always worked for me is make friends that are creative and talented and interesting and unique and different to other people. And the more varied and unique your friends are, and the more cool and smart they are, those are the people that will end up doing well. And those are the people and those are the relationships that will end up helping you in the long run.
Ada.
I just want to piggyback on saying, like, yeah, it is a myth, not that an agent is a bad thing to have, not that you shouldn't have one, but it is a myth that you need one. I do not have one. I've dallied with them here and there and was very unsatisfied and have never stuck with one. But effectively, I have not had an agent for my entire career. This year, I arranged a bunch of music for Virgin Voyages. I was going to music direct and be in Rocky Horror at ACT before it got bulldozed by disease. I'm slated to be in a show in at the Public whenever things reopen. All of those things that I have gotten to that point in my career, and I've never ever had an agent. I couldn't agree more with what David's saying about, like, it has all been about the friends I've made and the work I've developed and oh God, and not to mention just being nice to people. You meet so many people who are such a lot of words just flew through my head.
I've always said my operating modality in the business has just been, don't be an asshole, right? Like, it's that simple, and you can, and just by living by that, I like to say you create your own army. And I will say, I've been represented by a number of different agents, and I still have agents now, but I have a manager who I actually think is the first time I've had a true partner in my career. I've been with him for about 2 years, but I think that's really the first time. Almost every time I don't think my agents ever get me a job. They'll negotiate the deal, but I got myself in the room because of someone.
Yeah, that's right. And that's how I found them to be most useful, is if it feels like now there's a deal that seems over my head.
And then they're all nice in.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're in the power seat anyway, because you're like, would you like a chunk of the money I'm about to make?
Right.
Do this.
They don't get you work, but they can help you make a better deal. And I will say, that she or he who represents themselves has a fool for a client. So that is one good reason to have representation. Yeah, Matthew, I want to hear from you.
I just wanted to piggyback on something David said a little bit before the agent bashing talk, which I also agree with to some extent, by the way. David was talking about networking, and I think that's really important to touch upon. Networking is very important, but I think that it needs to be talked about a little bit more nuanced. There is a difference between, I think, very networking in a very shallow way and networking in a very genuine way. Mm-hmm. And I think David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the thing you were speaking to was when people kind of rush to the agent and they really just it's kind of sharky, you know what I mean? It feels inauthentic.
Yeah, there's like blood in the water.
Yeah, and that is definitely, I think, a big mistake that a lot of people make. But networking is important. I mean, whether we like it or not, every career in the arts, ultimately, a fundamental way how you advance in a career in the arts is by who you know. So knowing people is really important. But when you go about getting to know more people, you need to do it in an authentic way and not just an opportunistic way. So, I think actually Tristian talked to a great way that he went about this. He started volunteering at a festival with like-minded people, and he didn't go, I'm sure he networked in this opportunity here, but he wasn't going about it in a kind of sharky manner, you know what I mean? So you do need to find a community, you do need to meet people, because ultimately people always will get you the job that you want to have and help elevate you, but you have to go about it in a really smart and, humanistic way.
A genuine way, right? I think right. That if someone is being worked, I think they feel that, and whereas if you meet someone and you connect, it becomes a whole other thing. I'll just tell a short anecdote about that to bring me back to my manager, who is the first real partner I've had in my career, which is a member of the Wolf Pack, which is a offshoot of Humanitas. It's about 75 all-women group of female showrunners, directors, and writers. And we were asked to be presenters at the Humanitas Awards about 3 years ago, I guess. And I was seated at that luncheon next to another member of the Wolfpack who I didn't know, a showrunner named by the name of Felicia Henderson. And within 10 minutes of being seated next to each other, we were like, oh, where have you been all my life, right? We just couldn't believe how much we connected, but it was in a genuine way, right? And we became very good friends. And when I was having agent troubles and needed some advice, I called her, and then she said, who you should talk to is you should talk to my manager, who is not looking for clients, and I wasn't looking for a manager, but he'll offer you advice. And so he and I ended up having a 2-hour first conversation. He asked to read one of my pilots. I sent it over. And the next day he called up and he said, so are you maybe looking for a manager? And I was like, well, maybe if it's you, right? And that's how we found each other. But it was completely organic. It was because I actually connected with Felicia, because I actually connected with Daryl. It was nothing about them feeling worked or like I had an agenda. And I think that is the big difference. So I want to pivot to another question. When you were job searching, because I know a lot of our listeners are job searcher, and I put this out to all of you. I'd like you to share, if you would, what is the Oh, wait, first of all, we have a question that I think pings off our last subject, so I'm going to go to there first. So is there any advice for this all-important networking when we're in the middle of a pandemic and we can't meet up with people in person? Does anyone have any advice for that, how to connect with people now? Matthew?
Yeah, I have been doing a lot of thinking about this recently. Kind of like Ada, my work now is all short-term gigs. I'll work on a project anywhere from a week to, maybe a few months. So for what I do, I'm constantly checking in with people, networking, trying to make sure that I'm on people's radars and people are thinking about me for future gigs. We're in a really difficult time to do that. This is completely different from then, what the recession was 10 years ago. This is a time where it's really difficult to just have a party where you meet people or a event where you meet people. I didn't mention this before, but I've been the co-president of Tisch West, the official Tisch alumni organization in Los Angeles for, I think it's 9 years now. And we've been thinking about how do we somehow provide the networking component to people during this time. And it's a really tough nut to crack. I think the way that you ultimately get as close to networking and being able to meet people and stay in touch with people, right now, the closest way we can get to that is by having events like this, by having seminars. There's lots of opportunities to continue to educate yourself through online classes, watching panels and seminars like this. And I think there's also a way to stay in touch with people in an authentic, genuine way, like we just talked about. It's tough to, I think, expand your network too much during this time, but there are ways to maintain your network during this time. So for me personally, if I see, a friend of mine, I see their show just came out on Netflix or whatever, I'll just write them an email going, hey, I just finished your season. It was really great. Hope you're doing well. So I challenge myself to still stay connected to my community that I already have in authentic yet small ways. And then I do think that there's also a way to join online communities to some extent. Like I've had a lot of friends who have been making short films while they're quarantined, with just themselves or with their significant other. And I've seen people connect on Vimeo or on Facebook when they post up their work, and it does attract people coming towards you, which again, really emphasizes the importance of you still doing your own art and your own work. So there's still small ways to do things like this. It's a tough time because we can't just all come together as a group with 60 people and start meeting new folks, but there are ways to find each other through, I guess, online communities and through seminars like this. And there's a way to maintain the community that you already have.
Does anyone else want to add to that? Estefania? Yeah.
Not necessarily in that point, but I'm one of the kind of person that finds it really hard to reach out to communities and try to become part of the networking experience. It's something that I'm so reticent to do. So for those who are like, well, this is really not my jam, the networking part, and like, want to be in my shell and I'm happy in my shell. My job, the job that I got after the one that my friend got me, I got it on without any networking. And that's the one that I got at HBO. And people kept asking me like, who do you know here? I was like, I don't know anyone. So I would put in a word for the ones
So how did you get that job? You just applied through the portal and got an interview and made it in, or what happened?
Well, yeah, that's the short part of it. But the thing that gave me the edge over whatever other people that were applying were the extra skills. So I would just want to put in a word for like just adding extra skills to your tool set, because it's that and then some that gets you the job over the friend who might, oh yeah, we're cool and I just know how to edit. It's like, yeah, I know how to edit and I can do sound design and I also can shoot and I do animation and I speak Spanish. And so Spanish was what got me the job at HBO. They had been looking for a producer for 8 months who could do a bunch of things and plus a language. So I never considered Spanish going to be my way into the industry, but it was my saving grace. And I would encourage everyone to find that extra something that you can add to your tool set that is something that others don't have, that would give you the edge in that resume.
Interesting, because one of our listeners asked how your experience might have been different as a non-American, second language English speaker, and it actually turned out to be your advantage in this as opposed to an obstacle, which might have been the assumption.
I thought that would have been an obstacle,
Right.
because yes, my dominion of the English language perhaps is not the greatest, but then having the ability to communicate in two languages, and actually I even have a third language that I learned at NYU. I learned French, but that didn't help me at the HBO job. But now with the YouTube job, now I'm an international producer, I added that part to the resume. I speak French and I speak Italian, I'm learning Portuguese, and that part gave me the ultra edge over somebody that, okay, I also speak Spanish. Like, yeah, I also have these other ones. So anytime that I added a skill, it gave me an edge to the job. And I could say that when I got on my own, I didn't have anyone like vouching for me at HBO. Nobody knew me. They just knew that, oh, you can do so many things, and then you have this. So I would ask everyone to make a kind of an inventory of your skills and see if there's anything else that you might want to learn or are interested in that might not be necessarily directed to the thing that you're doing, that could potentially help out or you just enjoy. And you'll never know when you end up using it and becoming that thing that gives you the edge to get the job.
I say that about every meeting too. You never know. I've had so many general meetings with people and I had no idea if there was ever going to be anything that came out of it. And then sometimes it'll be 5 years later and I'm across the room from that person, and oh, now we know each other and this conversation is easier, right? So it's hard to see that when you're in the midst of it. I'm going to offer up one of my favorite networking tips, which I think is something that you can use right now. It's because people are home, and I think people are also looking for ways to reach out to community. I think if there's someone that you want an introduction to that you can wrangle, or someone that you admire that you want to cold write to, just asking for an informational interview and having some really well organized and smart questions that show a real understanding of that person's career and why you've asked for this, is a really good thing to do. You're not asking them for a job. They don't have to do anything for you other than be flattered by your attention. Flattery always works. And then at the end of that conversation, I think you have one ask, which is there one other person that you think that you would suggest that I could talk to, right? One other person who might be able to help me in my career path or have a piece of advice that might resonate with where I'm going. When they give you that other person, then you can follow up. It gives you reason to write back to person A and say, oh, I met with person B, thank you so much, and keep them informed. And that's a way you can begin to network as you go forward. We did also have a user contribution on the networking during the pandemic question, which is that if you get the Slack app, there is a hashtag virtual-coffee, which connects you with people who are working in the film industry every 2 weeks. And it's only 27 members currently, but it is hopefully growing. And it was a resource that was listed on the Blue Collar Post Collective Facebook group. So thank you to one of our listeners for that information. Okay, so I want to try to lighten things up here. I want to ask you guys, what was the worst piece of advice anyone ever gave you about charting your career? What was the worst piece of advice? Who'd like to handle that one?
Real quick, my mom said during the crisis of 2009 to just move back to Jersey, get a desk job, buy a car. So okay. she was asking me just to leave New York, and I knew I can't leave New York, because or like a big city, to go into a small town and just forget about your dream of being anything.
So that's bad advice. Give up. I agree with that. Who else had some bad advice? Nobody? All right. So, yeah, David.
My bad advice was, I don't remember who told me, but it was like, I think it was something along the lines of like, write stuff that people want, like write what other people want, which I think has a purpose. You know, when you have a job and someone says, I need you to write this thing, then absolutely write what people want. But I think when it's just you and you're trying to like make a name for yourself and stand out, you should go as crazy as you can. That's my feeling.
I agree, that authentic voice. That's a whole other conversation, that whole writing conversation. But let's talk about a little bit about where we are now, right? So obviously this pandemic has affected everybody, right? So, you know, things have been canceled or postponed. So how have you, each of you individually, been impacted? And as a jump off from that, what skills did you learn and tactics did you learn from the last recession that you're having to re-employ now? So yeah, Tristian.
Hey, so it's a very interesting situation for me because working on a TV show, I was already handling erratic production schedule, and I was just learning the ropes for our cartoon president. And I knew they were going on hiatus for spring because they do the first half of the episodes, and then there's a break, and then they do the last set. Because they want all the political humor to be up to date. So I was already planning on not working during this time. And the New York City shutdown started at the end of March, which was like when I was wrapping up my work anyway. So we officially shut down with 1 week left to go. And my work was so great that they let me take the desktop computer home with me because it had the CPU power to handle these big cartoons. But we wrapped like shortly after that, and then I went on hiatus. So I'm going back in the summer to finish production. And the hiatus was extended by a little bit of time that I'm not worried about because my plan after this, it wasn't just a shutdown. I mean, it's very, like, I'm sure everyone has their own story of like where they were the day the city shut down. Like I went through some things and then 2 weeks later, like woke up and was like, oh, I'm not working right now. And I'm at home and I have to Lysol wipe the bathroom door for my dad every day. And but my plan was to work on my cartoon film. Like I wanted to get back to my filmmaking and get back to the drawing board and start making animation again, because I kind of got to the point where I had all these animation friends, but maybe they forgot I was animating. So it's like, I need to create something new and do that. And I had just done a huge drawing project the year before. So I had all these comics to work with. And I finally sat down at home and I had some money saved up. So I wasn't like struggling to pay the rent. I went on unemployment like many other people. And I've been sitting at my computer drawing most of the day. And looking back on it, when I spent like a year or more after graduating, like a lot of the time like worrying about the kind of job I was not getting and how I would take care of all my bills. I would go back and say to myself, like, you can worry about all those bills, but also like keep drawing, keep doing it, making another film at the same time, because when you do get a job, and if it's industry adjacent or like you're in something that's taking up your time, those days are gonna go by and you're not gonna have the time you had when you were freeloading, unemployed, terrible person, not doing anything. There is a huge pressure for millennials and people who graduated at our time to constantly be questioning whether or not they're producing enough or doing enough work. And on social media, you can get very jealous of people's good news, and that might negatively affect your outlook. But I'm glad that I'm putting my energy into art right now, because there's so many different things happening, and I'm like, you know what, I set a goal for myself. I'm going to keep doing this. And fortunately, I have the security of going back to a TV show job in the summer, and I imagine I'm going to be working from home now.
How about you, Matt? Because you work in physical production, so have you been completely derailed?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think it's 100%. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. I mean, yeah, there is what I do. There's no work. There's no production. That being said, do I feel 100% shut down? The answer is no. You know, I think you know what Tristian was just saying. You can still be productive in a different way. You could still be working on, you know, your own projects, which ultimately is what you always need to be doing, whether there's a pandemic or there's not a pandemic, which always helps you in the long run. So you can still be doing things like that. So I don't feel 100% shut down, but in terms of what I do professionally, yes, we're not able to shoot anything right now. But that being said, I'm still able to work on personal things, still help my friends who are doing their own personal things, and also just sort of continuing to keep up with my community. So those are all things that you can be doing during this time.
How about you, Estefania? How have you been affected, and what are you doing to adapt and survive?
As a general, at YouTube, we had so many productions going on, and as a creative in marketing, I was traveling everywhere, so all of the traveling stopped. And then we got a call saying that we can no longer reach out to agencies to get additional work done, so everything has to be done in-house. So now, I've always been a one-woman band, and now we really have to be self-sufficient, our team. Yeah, because before you just call an agency, it's like, oh, hey, can you do this for tomorrow? Okay, great. Now there's no budget for that. There's no budget for anything. So we have to do so much more with less. And that's when we're just throwing everything that we know how to do at it. Again, all of the skills that I have acquired through everything, even though I was in a supervising position, now I manually do like all the editing again, all the graphics, all the stuff in-house. So it's shorter timelines, fewer budgets, no production. But I've heard that a lot of companies that want to get our business are trying to figure out a way to do safe productions. So slightly coming back, and they're telling us, oh, now we're doing this with masks and safe distance, and they're trying to reinvent production. And that's exciting to me, and I definitely want to be a part of that. And how can you reinvent production? Because post-production is easy.
Right.
Well, kind of, right? Take a hard drive and second screen at home and you're good. Production's like, okay, now we're gonna actually have to be with a crew, with talent. How do we handle that? Yeah, there's a big opportunity there, and we're going to only be looking at people that have figured it out or are in the process of figuring out, versus just waiting for this to die out.
Yeah, if I could also add to that, I mean, we're also, it's a tough time that we're in, but I'm optimistic because things are changing. And every time there's something happens where the industry has to reshuffle, there's always suddenly new opportunities. So going back to 10 years ago when there was a recession, I remember at the time there was this new hot thing called web series coming up. And so suddenly there was this web series community that was sort of up and coming, and the main industry didn't really know what this was, but someone like me, fresh out of school, was able to tap into that community and start meeting people and rising faster in my field because of that. So looking at today, I think that because of everything that's happened, we are going to have to find a new way to do things. Like people are finding way to shoot content in their homes while they're quarantining, or sending equipment to an actor so they can, shoot what you need in their own home. And so I think it's important to think about how will the business change because of all this? And also, how can I ride that wave? So like, I've had friends who have become now, like they saw this like months ago and they became the person that now knows how to send a sanitized like bundle of equipment to an actor's house. And suddenly they've been busier than they ever have been in their entire career. Or live streaming is now going to become a much bigger industry than it ever was before. If you were, the person who was that everyone knows how to do live streaming. I think that's going to be a really great skill set for you to have, more so than ever. You know, and like, actually, I was just watching the behind the scenes for the Mandalorian show the other day, and what they're doing with virtual sets, like, I'm convinced is going to be the future. So if I were suddenly restarting my career, I'd be like, how do I somehow tap into that small community and ride that wave of what's going to be the future in our industry?
How about you, David? What's happened? You've been continuing to work because writing is not
Yep.
crowd dependent.
I feel like it's a privilege, but I'll admit it, that I actually kind of enjoy being quarantined. I know it's hard, and I know it's like, I'm privileged to have this job that continues to go even in the quarantine, and so financially I'm okay. But as a writer, I like being holed up in my little room with my Peloton and just writing. I just like it, and I hope that, I mean, I've been in the virtual writers room for a little while too, which is like hell on earth. So I just enjoy having my time, and I think my biggest takeaway from this time, this like quarantine and COVID and everything, has been that I think Tristian said it, but like not to put too much pressure on yourself to be productive all the time, because it's a weird time for everybody. And I know for me, like for like TV and writing TV and writing movies, things like that, like there's other ways to be productive that aren't just like working on your computer. Like it's like, give yourself a break. Like you can get high and watch The Firm, you know, at night or whatever. And that's not slacking off. That's like, it's research. You're learning, you know, it's like you're absorbing. Yeah, you're absorbing art. And I just saw Field of Dreams for the first time. I came out like 20 years ago, but it was good.
Yeah, watching films is research. Also important.
That's excellent thinking. I love that. Exactly.
Because you have to keep on top of all your filmography, and it's like, I gotta know what this is.
Yeah.
Ada, as a performer, how have you been impacted? Have you been able to work at all, or?
A teeny bit, very, very little. So I had the 2020's been rough. It's been a rough year. I was installing this big thing on Virgin's new cruise ship, and I was really excited about it because even though the venue's a little silly, we were doing something really cool. We were kind of disguising this like poly queer love story in the middle of, it was kind of like, here, eat a bunch of food, watch a bunch of circus tricks, listen to cool songs that Ada arranged. Like, by the way, it's a story about 3 lovers, not 2, like way that we support that. And, and it was really cool. I was so excited it was supposed to, they were supposed to begin cruises, I think, God, like right about when it hit. And so I said most of my jobs are short. This was probably one of the longest jobs I've ever worked on. I arranged this music and built all the tracks over, I don't know, probably a year and a half. And the actual install of the show was one of the most insane things I've ever been. Oh yeah, also we started in Italy too. So we left Italy on a cruise ship 2 weeks before Italy was overrun.
Oh boy. Wow.
It was really great. How I haven't gotten this sickness yet is beyond me.
I'm knocking some wood for you.
Maybe I haven't. I don't know. So it was like that gig now has been postponed indefinitely. And of course, because it's an immersive show, performers are coming up to you, serving you food, tying you up with like shibari rope and stuff. So it's like the least COVID friendly show possible. So it's just postponed like into like deep 2021. The cast we created it with will be long gone. We're going to have to completely recast it and sort of, it's going to feel very much like starting from scratch. So that was going on. I had just come, so I fled the boat. We were actually supposed to stop in New York, and in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the CEO got on the horn and was like, hey, everybody, we're not doing that because why would we show up in the middle of, you know, this crazy thing that's happening and like be like, look at our brand new opulent boat,
Right.
you know? So they said, no, we're just going to go straight to Miami where the boat lives. Ship. They hate it when I say boat. Ship. The ship lives. So I got off of that. I got up there, flew back to New York, thought I was going to be in New York for about a week and then go to American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, where I was going to work with this really great director friend of mine who was a year beneath me at NYU, Sam Pinkleton, and we were going to do this really crazy, awesome, huge production of Rocky Horror, and I was going to music direct it. I was going to play a role in it.
What role? Which role?
Columbia.
Oh.
I was going to play Columbia and front the band. Like, it was going to be like
So
Columbia
great.
with a guitar, you know?
Yeah.
Little tap dancing too. Put that Count 21 education to use. So that obviously, it was like that, literally the quarantine started that week. So, you know, and it was when it was still unclear how long this was going to go, they were like, well, first week of rehearsals canceled. Okay, the first 2 weeks. And then, you know, it's me and the creative team started being like, well, we have to have some rehearsal, you know, and finally they said, yeah, we have to. So that is completely, as far as I know, I mean, we'll see, but officially right now is totally dead in the water, is just done, and which was really sad. I was really looking forward to that. And then on top of all that, I've been cast in a show at the Public, and I'm sort of very unclear at the moment about what's going on with it. As far as I know, it's still gonna happen, but I don't know what that means. I'm also very unclear if I like have license to talk about what it is or not yet. But,
okay, well then don't. We don't
yeah,
want to get you in trouble.
No. I'll say this:
for doing us a favor, that would be wrong.
they were supposed to have a gala on Monday, and which they postponed because of all of the big political moment that we're in. We were gonna do we were, you know, recorded one of those everybody sings in their own houses kind of numbers. So whenever that gala happens, you can see me singing a song from it. So
they're doing the gala virtually.
That's right. It's actually the second virtual gala I've been a part of. So ACT did one, and we made a crazy video version of one of the Rocky Horror songs. So actually, to answer your question, that's kind of what I've been doing. Is ACT said, will you make us a video so we can do our fundraiser? And I said, yeah. And then, you know, same thing for this upcoming show at the Public. They were like, we want to record a number. So there's that. And then we also did a Zoom workshop, which was of the piece, which was, I guess, I hope the creative, I'm not on the creative, this is one where I'm truly just an actor in it, which hasn't happened in a million years. It's very weird. But so I don't know. I assume the creative team found it useful, but it's weird because it's this huge 2.5-hour musical that's almost entirely sung through, but you can't sing on Zoom together because of the delay.
Right.
So it was us reading this thing that normally we sing, so that was odd. So I feel like I've been able to get little things here and there that have mostly been about helping the organizations and institutions that employ me try to get through this. You know, but since they have no income right now, the pay on those things has been meager, and so I finally the Virgin gig paid pretty decently, so I was seeing how far I could make it on that money before I kind of hit the end of it, and I just applied for unemployment yesterday.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. This is my first time ever.
We had on our session on Monday night, we had director of LA Shakespeare who was talking about the challenges that live theater companies are facing right now.
Yeah,
he thinks that
they're
it's
hurting.
Lead to a radical reinvention of theater. He had some very actually interesting ideas about how it'll be the collapse of the subscription model which serves a sort of an upper class white audience, and that he was actually hopeful that the collapse of that model might give rise to more trenchant and
I think so.
diverse material, which I thought, well, you know, if that's the case, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think it's scary to watch old structures change, but if new things could come out of them, it's also inspiring.
Yeah, I think theater is kind of about to sort of be the Wild West again, because just nothing's going to work the way that it used to, and we were so dependent on being able to put 400 butts in seats crammed together. I think a big thing that I think is going to change the landscape a lot, that's about to happen, I think next month, is they're going to Disney Plus acquired the rights to the filmed version of the staging of Hamilton, of the original cast, and they're going to put it up on Disney Plus, and I think it's going to be a big hit. I think it's going to make a lot of money, because everything that show does ever makes a lot of money. And I think it's going to wake up theaters to the idea, both as a way of solving this problem and also as a way of like, hey, look, you idiots, there's a way to do this that actually expands your audience way beyond it ever could have, you know, what it could have been. And so I think we're going to start seeing, like, you can stream a Broadway show, you know. It wouldn't surprise me.
Well, the Metropolitan Opera is already doing that.
They already do that in theaters. Absolutely. So I think that's going to be a thing that's coming, you know, and for what Matthew was saying, like, anybody who's, you know, if you have any interest or pre-existing skills that have to do with the facilitating of those things for theaters, big or small, that's going to be in demand, like, now, like tomorrow, you know.
Christian, did you also have your hand up there?
Speaking of the changes due to Corona, so I just began my presidency at my club, and every year we put on a film festival from all of our members. It's our big event, big party at the end of the year. And I had worked on it before, so I knew what was going on, but this was going to be my first time as leader, and I had never had like a leadership position like that before. So I wanted to do like a good job, and I was wrestling with all of the responsibilities that I had. Like, it was another challenge that I was like putting myself through. And then it all just went away. We had a meeting, and I decided that, you know what, like, we're a group of volunteers. We can do this next year. So everything that's supposed to happen, I had just announced the first screening nights so people could vote on the films, and I had to cancel them because the School of Visual Arts shut down. So yes, what could I do now? With the festival, there are many people already demonstrating in the city that it's possible to put on interesting and professional virtual reality events, in the sense that it's a Zoom conference or something like that. But it's a trial and error Wild West scenario as people are wrestling with like huge technical issues that they never had to deal with before. But hearing the live action Estefania talk about how everything is shut down because she's in a very tactile situation. I have hope, because like in a month, 6 months, like next year, things will be very close to normal. And what's going to be different is all of the problems and flaws that have been exposed in the production system by forcing everyone to work from home or stay at home. Those are going to improve things, and it'll just be added to what's been going on. So like now people can see that there's lots of fun creative ways to create new content at home. They say that the animation industry is getting really excited because they're all set up to work from home anyway. And I am looking forward to that, because our show in particular uses new software that takes a cartoon puppet and maps it to a webcam video. So if I was super prepared, you'd be looking at a cartoon version of myself. I could press a key on the keyboard and poof, it would be animated. But I've been busy, you know, playing Animal Crossing, so I don't have all the time. But stuff like that, it's advancements in technology since 10 years ago when I graduated, streamlining the process. All of our software has like come together in ways that were unheard of 10 years ago. I wouldn't lose hope thinking that, oh, you can't get a film production happening, because you might not be able to do it right now, and you probably shouldn't if you need to take care of your safety and well-being, but there's definitely going to be new fun things to do in the future.
So, you know, a lot of our listeners are people who are just graduating and just figuring it out. And, you know, I think you guys have given a lot of good tips about building your network and all of that. But are there any specific industry networking groups that you recommend? We talked about the Blue Collar Post Collective. Are there any, and your animation organization, Tristian, are there any other groups that you recommend, Ada?
For those of you in theater, if there's anybody who specifically is a femme identifying person, there's an excellent group called Maestra. It's like Maestro, but Maestra, that is run by oh Lord, why am I blanking on her name in this moment? Jason Robert Brown's wife, Georgia Stitt. Georgia Stitt. That's really fabulous, and they hold when we're allowed to all be together, they hold these nightly monthly meetings where they'll bring everybody together, and they'll bring in like a really fabulous successful Broadway composer or lyricist, somebody like Janine Tesori or whatever, and they provide a lot of resources. Earlier today, I was watching a Zoom class about home recording via that group, and I think to be in their official roster, you have I think the only folks that are not invited are cis-men. But that said, I believe that that all of the classes and other resources they offer outside of like the real particular like database and women songwriter meeting, all folks of all genders can attend, and I found it to be really the community that Georgia has built over there is really potent and fabulous, and there's a lot of opportunities there to talk to folks.
I know, Matthew, you would recommend utilizing Tisch West. Anything else? Which I
Yes.
also advocate for, by the way. Let me just say, I think Tisch West is an amazing organization that has, I mean, they've been very, let me just give you a couple of props. They've been incredibly supportive of NYU Los Angeles, have come to meet the students, come to the space, have partnered with us on various events, helped us when we put together, as we did at the beginning of this past semester, a mentorship program. We were able to match our entire cohort up with very seasoned mentors in their field. And so I give a lot of credit back to Matt and team, but what else would you recommend besides your awesome Tisch West organization?
Well, thank you for those kind words, Nina, and also and right back at you and Daniel and everyone at NYU LA. I mean, you guys are also doing incredible work to provide things for our community. So, and yeah, and so Tisch West, you know, we're doing kind of the same thing as you guys. We are trying to create events that interest the community that we have here, which is a lot of pretty recent graduates. So, you know, everyone who's watching this, they're already, I think, clued in to some extent about NYU LA and Tisch West. But if, in case you're not clued into all the ways you can hear about Tisch West events, there is, I mean, if you Google Tisch West, I'm pretty sure something will come up. You can sign up for the mailing list to hear about events. There's Tisch West Facebook page where you can hear about our upcoming events. And there's also a Google group where just about every single NYU alum in Los Angeles is basically living on to some capacity. Technically, the Google group is unofficial, but there's, you know, over 1,000 members on that, and people post to that all day, every day, and something like, hey, I'm looking for a roommate, or hey, I need a DP for a project, or Tisch West is having an event, so I encourage everyone to get on that Google group, in addition to keeping their ear open for Tisch West events and NYU LA events. So, I mean, for me personally, when I first moved to Los Angeles, I really didn't know. I knew maybe one person when I first moved here, but I immediately got clued into the Tisch West community in Los Angeles, and to this day, my ground zero in terms of who I know in Los Angeles and every opportunity I've ever gotten ultimately traces back to someone I've met in the Tisch West community. So I've personally found it enormously beneficial, both professionally and socially, and just for me having a place to be, a community of people to be around in Los Angeles. So I encourage everyone to be tapping into the resources that NYU and Tisch give you in terms of the alumni community that we have.
Also, in terms of those of you who are in LA or planning to be in LA, as Matthew mentioned, part of what we've been doing at NYU Los Angeles is each semester planning a series of events that are open to alumni. So our kickoff semester, that included 3 events. One was a history of horror night, which we did Halloween week at Candela La Brea, which is an old salsa club in LA. We served a taco dinner and watched heads explode for 3 hours. It was fantastic. We also had an all NYU party at the Grammy Museum, where we had exclusive access to the Grammy Museum. And we did an event about merging your social or political message into your creative content, which over 100 alums showed up for. This semester, we were working on a number of things when the pandemic hit, and I want to raise one of them just to address how the virtual reality of our lives, as opposed to VR, impacted that. We sponsored, along with Variety and Young Entertainment Activists, the first Hollywood Digital Climate Summit. That was originally going to be a live event. UTA was going to lend us their building, and we would have been able to accommodate maybe 200 people for the panels and programming. When the pandemic hit, we pivoted it to a virtual event and ended up having 475 registrants. And I think also not only were people more able to attend because it became a virtual event, we were able to get a more diverse group of panelists, because we weren't worried about, we had panelists that were in Oakland, but they just tuned in electronically. We didn't have to have any expenses. So we had a climate event that reached more people, had 0 carbon imprint, which we were all kind of proud of. And we recorded all the sessions, which will be available to all of you if anyone is interested in the subject, as soon as they're edited through the NYU YouTube page. So that was one example where the pandemic actually expanded the audience and the reach of something. But going back to networking or organizational or groups through which you can network, David, do you have any additions to that question?
Not really. I think for me, networking has always been just, I made a couple of really good friends when I was at NYU, dramatic writing, and they're still my really good friends now. And they've helped me get jobs, and I've helped them get jobs. And I feel like it's just a good idea to value the people that are creative around you, and the people that if you just graduated, the people that were in your class that you really liked, or they wrote a play that you really liked, or they did a dance that you really liked. I feel like just, keeping those people in your circle.
And Estefania, any groups that you recommend?
Well, this one's more for multicultural. A lot of companies have ERG groups that are either for Latinos in the industry, or actually just Latinos that work in that company, or Black Americans, or LGBTQ. HBO had all the chapters of all of the ERG chapters, and they also allowed for people that were not in these in working at the companies to join in and sit in for a lot of workshops, and they might not be necessarily related to the industry, but you meet a lot of people, especially when it comes to for like support, community support. So I would recommend, if it's not particularly in the industry, go seek these groups that you can potentially identify with, because they're also helping out in terms of how to deal with the crisis, but from the perspective of your community, particular community. So these companies that have large chapters, maybe seek out if they have admissions, even if you're not in the company. And that's how you can meet people that are working in those companies.
One other organization that I would suggest is Young Entertainment Activists. They have been our partner on 2 events, the Merging Your Social or Political Content into Your Work, and also the Climate Summit. But they are a group of all young, just a couple of years out of school, most of them industry professionals who are working on everything from pay equity for assistance to climate change to voting. But they have they have a bi-weekly newsletter and a very healthy community, and another very good, they also post job opportunities through their website. That's another very good resource, particularly if you are socially activist minded, which we all should be. Just saying, don't have to have my politics, just have politics, just go out there, have an opinion. Okay, so that was the end of my questions. Did you have something you wanted to add, Tristian? Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that our southern group, ASIFA South, which is in Georgia, they are doing a new animation discussion panel tomorrow called Navigating the New Norm. And they're going to have some entertainment lawyers come and talk about the changing landscape from working remotely from home, the DMCA takedown and copyright laws, the stimulus bill, and more. So they just started creating a video conference series where they will have different speakers talk on how the industry is changing in animation today with the coronavirus shutdown. And I'm going to post a link to that in the chat so you can sign up for that tomorrow if you want to learn more about that.
Cool. So I want to go to our audience questions, unless Matthew, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to plug one more thing.
Yeah.
For anyone in the post-production field, so, editing, sound mixing, colorist, whatever, there's the Los Angeles post-production group, which I'm not in the post-production world, but I've attended a few of their meetups for fun, and found it to be a pretty good community, and I have recommended to other friends who are editors, and they really like it. So the Los Angeles post-production group, they go by LAPPG, so that's something to check out if that's your field. And then the last thing I also think it's worth plugging is the mentor program that Tisch has, which Lily Hung, who I know is facilitating the chat right now, or helping facilitate it, runs. And when I first moved to Los Angeles, I was a part of the program and found a lot of value in that. So I encourage all recent graduates to also look into the mentor opportunities that the Tisch Career Office has.
Cool. And also, if you're in LA and you're interested in the mentorship program that we have, we are looking for people to mentor our students. And even if you've only been out of a school a year, you can provide valuable impact. And we bring those groups together. So also then we can again mentor and create connection that goes beyond the mentorship. I want to go back. I've been trying to get as many audience questions as we can and keep the flow, but there are a few that I've missed. So I'm going to go back and take a look at those, make sure we're getting everything. So one question is, okay, so here's a good question. What role has love played in your lives? Which I guess really is a question about how have you managed the work-life balance? I feel that if you're an artist, that your personal and your professional are inevitably merged all the time. That's my personal feeling. What about you guys? How have you managed the personal and professional balance? No one wants to answer. Everyone's lonely. Okay, so.
I mean, it's funny this question is coming up because I just had my relationship of 7 years and an engagement end during the pandemic.
Oh, sorry.
Aw, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
But you managed for 7 years.
I managed for 7 years, but
life, so.
I will say, I mean, maybe by speaking up, I'm citing myself as an example of it not going so well, because I actually think that was a big issue that was raised towards the end there, which is like, I think depending on, I mean, God, I guess this is going to turn into dating advice now, but like, you know, when you're choosing a partner, like, you should really be upfront about what your life and career is like, and what that, you know, what kind of weirdness that creates. For example, like, had everything this year gone the way that it was supposed to go, I would have been gone on that boat for Chip for you know, what was that? I think 2 months, and then gone straight from there to San Francisco and done Rocky Horror for 2.5 months or something like that. So I was going to be gone, just not present in my partner's life for, you know, pretty much half a year. And like, that was the thing that caused lots of weird dynamics all through that relationship, and probably ultimately killed it. But you know, I also have friends who are now happily married and who have careers that function very much the same way or similarly to how mine does, and who have really set up a lot, you know, infrastructure within their relationship and a dynamic where they navigate those situations really elegantly. So, you know, but I think when I've seen it go bad, not that this is what I did, but like, I've seen it go bad when people aren't upfront with their partners about, like, even things like, oh, when I'm going to perform a show the night of, I always get incredibly stressed and it makes me lash out and I need lots of support. But, you know, it's like that kind of communication becomes so key in your relationships. And it's a tricky balance.
Estefania, I see you're smiling over there. Would you like to chime in on that? Note?
Great, everything she said is awesome. I had a different experience, thank God. My husband is an artist as well, so he completely gets it. And he's been, during this pandemic, well, actually throughout my entire career, a second pair of amazing eyes. So having that person who was like, oh, is it cool? Okay, it's like, it showed him like all my work before I even showed it to my, like, whoever I had to work with, was very supportive, and we've been able to learn from each other a lot. So if you find yourself with somebody that is similarly minded, or at least their heart it's in a similar place, it's so much easier to try to push each other up and rely on each other. Because yeah, when he needs inspiration, like, I can come up with an idea, and then we're good at brainstorming together, even if it's for his project or my project. So that has just worked out.
Anyone else want to tackle the love question, David?
I agree with Estefania. I think it's a good idea to marry somebody smart, because then they can give you notes, which is really helpful. Like, my husband Stephen is also a writer, but he's a journalist, like a music journalist. So, which I think is kind of perfect, because we don't end up talking about the same things all the time. Like, we don't just talk about our jobs all day. But he understands what it's like if you're on deadline and you have to shut yourself in a room and you don't respond, or you don't text back, or, you know, he knows all that stuff. And luckily for me, he is smart, so he gives me good notes on my drafts. And like Estefania was saying, it's like an extra pair of eyes that you can depend on, and it's a cool resource, as well as just somebody to hang out with, you know.
Okay. Tristian or Matt, you want to dodge that or go wade into the love question?
All I'm going to say is that looking back on my 20s, I wish I wasn't so concerned with like getting a relationship, that special someone in there, and just like gone and kept doing my own thing and been okay and confident with that. One of the questions before was, what is the worst piece of advice you've gotten? And I had to think about that. And it's kind of like, it's not a specific piece of advice. It's kind of like the American dream was maybe not great advice, because I definitely grew up imagining success as like having a picket fence house in Connecticut or whatever, and that implies being married and successful all at once. And all these dreams of home ownership and getting married early kind of like really took a hit during the millennial and post-economic and the recession of 2009. So many people were discovering that like settling down and dating, it was all being changed at that time, especially because of the internet apps and the ways people interacted. It was so rapid. So I find it funny that even someone's asking like, how do you handle a dating life right now? I mean, it's going to happen eventually. It's just important to like, it would be better to have like your work define who you are. And then if you're a successful person, like you're going to attract interesting people to you. So don't put too much pressure on like having a boyfriend or girlfriend, or like, but don't play hard and work hard like I did for many years, because that's a lot of hangovers you can avoid.
That could be David's other series. So Matt, do you have anything else you want to add, or no?
I don't think anything too mind-blowing to add. Basically just echoing what everyone said, which I think has been phenomenal advice. I think the thing just to ultimately remember is that, you know, a work-life balance is needed, and you do have to consciously be reminding yourself, how do you maintain the balance? For me personally, I mean, and this is to be honest, this has been something that I've struggled with throughout my career. And you know, to put it lightly, I'm an extreme workaholic, and I do have to consciously remind myself every day, hey, listen, I've accomplished my career stuff that I need to do for the day, but what about the life stuff that I need to do today? So that is something that I'm working on. And like what's been said before, having a shared interest or having a partner that can give you notes is extremely important, and helps your partner remain a part of your work life as well. So that's really important. I've been very fortunate to my partner for the last 2.5 years. I'm very fortunate that she understands my workaholic tendencies, but also finds a way to get me out of it, which is really important. And also is a great sounding board for the things that I do.
Yeah, I think that's, we talked about in the beginning, that, you know, self-care is as important as the care of your work. So having a partner who can help you add that to your life.
Yeah, 100%. And you having a good, you know, healthy life helps you professionally as well.
So I have questions that are sort of related for Ada and Estefania. So Ada, specifically, people are wondering about your experience as a trans woman and how that has impacted your career trajectory and growth. So if you could address that, it would be great.
Absolutely. I'll preface this by saying that I've been incredibly lucky, and I also acknowledge that I have a lot of privilege. I think being a white trans woman is very different than being a black trans woman, as evidenced by the moment we're in right now. That said, I can only speak from what I've experienced, and I have to say, so I'm 33, and I made the decision to go for it at age 30, which was terrifying. Not only because of all the things you hear about how, you know, whatever, hormones have diminishing returns the older you get and your growth plates are done and blah, 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 blah. But also because even though the work I do now is a lot more, like more and more often I'm on a creative team and not necessarily on stage, I still am on stage, and I think, you know, I'm still part of the product, you know, and I thought that at age 30 I was worried I was nuking whatever career I had, because my name, first and last name, changed, the way I look changed, the kind of roles I'm willing to play changed, everything changed. What my experience has been is that, and this sounds sort of crazy, but if anything, I have gotten more jobs and better jobs post transitioning. And I think part of the reason for that is because, I mean, thank God, you know, art and progressive politics have always been like this. I mean, how could it be any other way? But I think that we've entered this really exciting moment in culture where this is a conversation that everybody's having. When I meet a little kid, I don't have to explain what a trans person is, which in fact did happen to me as a kid. I only met one, and the whole thing was presented really weirdly, and I left being like, what is up with that person? You know, I was teeny tiny, but you know, this is a conversation that's being that's happening sociopolitically, it's happening interpersonally, and it's happening in media and art right now. So I actually think the landscape right now is certainly not as compared to the number of roles there are for cis folks, and it's not to say that everything's perfect and doesn't need more improvement. It surely does. But there actually is a lot of opportunity out there for trans folks right now. I think where the question gets hairier is like, put it this way: if I could flip a light switch, and just be a cis girl, I would. That's what I feel like I am in my heart. But you know, I think the question becomes like, well, so does that mean that I only play trans roles? Can I play a part written for a cis woman? And the answer is, yeah, of course I can. It also brings in lots of other sort of like weird practical considerations that get wrapped up in personal considerations. They kind of do this weird dance of things like my voice. How can I play a cis woman if I'm talking like this, right? So like I'm literally like trying, you know, that's been a big journey, is what do I do with my voice? How does it sound? Am I outing myself all the time by talking about it? And the truth is, a lot of these things aren't as big a deal as we trans folks tend to make them in our head. But also I recognize that I have some privilege. Like I was privileged to be born fairly hairless with little hands, you know? And it's not true of everybody. And, you know, and so the answer is that, to me, I think the only way to navigate it is to, on the one hand, be really honest with yourself about who you are and what you want and what you're willing to do. Because this is a conversation that everybody's navigating, and there's lots of new territory, especially if we start getting into the territory of you know, genderqueerness, non-binariness, stuff like that. It's not everyone's going to be informed. Not everyone is going to have prior experience with this. Not everyone is going to, you know, so I think you really need to have a sense of who you are and what you want. You really need to be willing and open about communicating that to the people you're working with. Because if you don't speak up, someone can't read your mind, right? I mean, I actually think that's great advice aside from transness. in your career on jobs, you should speak up and be clear about what you're willing and not willing to do, because it'll come up in a number of different ways. But I think another thing that has been a lesson that has come to me very, slowly is patience with people. In that this is territory that we're all navigating. I mean, obviously, these are our own individual journeys, but as culturally, we're all navigating these questions together, and of how to integrate trans folks into productions and things. And people are going to make mistakes. They just are. I make mistakes, you know? And I think I had a tendency when I first did this, you know, there's so much shame that I had built up over the years about it. It was so, there was so much internal strife that I had, that when I made the switch, I really wanted it to feel like pulling a Band-Aid off. You know, just do it. It'll hurt. And then, like, whatever. Everybody gets my pronouns not right now, or there's a problem. Everybody gets my name right now, or there's a problem, you know, so on and so forth. And I found that all that attitude did was create conflict with folks who actually had the best intentions and were totally willing to come along for the ride and the things I'm asking. But you have to remember, like, people are rewriting neural pathways in their brain, and you have to give them a chance to do that. So I'll say the more patient I've been with folks, the better experiences I've had with folks, and the more institutions and whatever directors and other actors and other creatives have demonstrated their willingness to learn and be on my side and be supportive. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that tirade.
That's an excellent answer. I'm gonna tell you separately about a non-binary and trans science fiction collection that I'm aware of. That
fabulous. I would love that. Yeah.
My daughter, who is a budding writer, has her first published story in it. So we're very
fabulous.
But transgalactic bike ride, a little push for the kids. Okay. But now for you, Estefania, from the perspective of a woman of color, we have the same question. How have you felt that being a woman of color has either contributed, it helped you that you had another language with one job, but have you also found that it's created obstacles in your path, or what's your experience been?
I think that at the time that I came out of college, the times were already changing for people of color in the industry. I had very distinct experiences at the very beginning of my career where I came across like a skepticism. And I don't know if it was a vibe that I was giving off, that I was insecure or had like imposter syndrome through the roof on sets or something. But I did encounter a lot of snickering, like, oh, do you even know what you're doing? Or those kind of comments. There's a particular one that stuck with me at Fashion Week. I was the only camera woman in like the pit of camera people. And yeah, and I was there with my camera and stuff. And oh my God, I got so many comments from the other camera guys. But at the end, I focused on just doing my job and delivering what I had to do. So I had to put so many things aside and just kind of like block them out. And I'm here to get this footage, and I'm going to deliver on this footage, and the footage was good. So that helped me build a little bit more confidence for the next shoot. And so every time that I had a project where I came in like, oh, I'm such a newbie, I don't know what I'm doing. Plus I had to deal with other people's expectations of what I can do, and sometimes they were very verbal about their expectations of my limitations for some reason, that I didn't see that other people were being told like, oh, you could be here. Nobody was told that, but I felt like I did get that at the beginning. Then times started changing. When I got the job at HBO, this marketing team emerged called multicultural marketing from the need of people realizing that they have to market to a multicultural demographic. Like there's no longer general marketing, and that exploded. Every company was doing that, realizing that they have to focus on niche marketing in order to actually sell you a product. So for example, that means if you're going to do a trailer for a movie, you can cut it different ways to appeal to different people. And they've got so many good results that all of a sudden, these huge companies were all down for, let's do multicultural marketing. And that's kind of where I got my foot in the door, not just being a Latina, but also a woman in the industry. We had a different perspective. We have different ideas and approaches to things. And that's when I think I found my voice in meetings where there was, you know, like a sea of people that didn't look like me, and I started speaking up, like, wait, but we're forgetting about this one thing. And I think that I broke out of my shell in a way, because I was afraid to at first voice my opinion, coming from a Latino perspective, living in the US. And then once I started getting the not just the validation, but the understanding that people are interested in what I had to say, I started speaking more. And it became an entire department. This multicultural marketing, it became like 30, 40 people all of a sudden, and it started from a group of 5. I have to give props to the woman that started it, Lucinda Martinez. Was great, amazing. She saw this need for it, and she's a Latina herself, and started advocating for, we need to speak to a specific audience. We cannot just like blanket for like the like cisgender white demographic. Like it has to be specific to you, and that's how it can speak to you. That gave me so much courage and empowerment. And now I can say that I go to shoots, I still get the differentiation of people kind of adjusting to like, oh, you're directing the shoot. Oh, that's cool.
Condescending, yeah, but
actually more like amused or like, oh, or like they're really excited, like they haven't seen that before. Yeah, whereas before it was like, oh, it changed. They're all changed to a happier, oh, this is cool. And then we're dealing with talent at HBO at different places. They felt also really cool that somebody of color would come in and interview them, because we could ask questions that other people might be like, oh, tiptoeing, that we're not comfortable asking Kerry Washington or Issa Rae or something. So I think that's when we also fulfill the need of being able to relate to certain talent. Like I was in HBO Latino, I was able to talk to all of the musicians, reggaeton artists, everyone, because I just had that knowledge, and I had that the Latino-ness, you know, and that helped me in my own development, but also in my own feeling of worth. That, oh, I bring this thing to the table that maybe other people might not have that. So I started building my own self-confidence, and that when I walk into shoots, I feel that, yeah, I know why I'm here, and I have a reason to be here, and I'm going to do my job, and it's going to be great.
I think that's crucial, sort of knowing who you are and your authentic self, and then tying that to your professional identity. I think that's absolutely, no matter from what place you are, you know, whether, you know, woman, male, straight, gay, you know, trans, cis, you know, of color, you know, white, you have to kind of key into your authentic self, because that's going to inform your best art, I think. So I think we've hit most of our questions. I wanted to just turn it out to our panelists and ask, is there any, like, I asked about the worst advice you guys got, but I'd like to know now, what is your best piece of advice for people going forward? And I'll go around to each of you in turn. I think, you know, as we said before at the top of this, a lot of our students that are listening, a lot of our audience that are listening are 2020 graduates who are just fresh out with their degree and going, now what the hell do I do? So what, in a pithy wrap up kind of way, Ada, what's your best piece of advice?
The best thing anybody ever said to me was, it was from this keyboard player who's like not particularly famous, but just like works constantly. It's just everywhere all the time. Has a really grounded career. And I said to him, like, how do you get that? And he said, be the last person standing. He said, you're gonna go, your jobs aren't gonna be great, whatever, and like your friends, you know, some friends are gonna drop out a year in, and some are gonna go and start working for Google and get other jobs 2 years in, and some are, you know, and he was like, be the last person standing, because sooner or later the body of work that you're creating and just the you-ness that you're putting out in the world will be recognized and will find somebody and will connect. I mean, honestly, it sounds like it's just more dating advice, which is like, there's plenty of fish in the sea, you'll find one eventually. But like, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And if you leave the ocean, you don't meet a fish, you know?
Right.
So stick with it.
Right.
It's a long haul.
Yeah. And I think I've heard that advice, and also be the person that everyone wants to work with. Like
That too,
that,
absolutely.
you know, like, you know, hang in there, have that perseverance, but also keep a good attitude about it.
I'd much rather hire someone who's good at something and lovely than someone who's great at something and an asshole. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. The no asshole policy. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Matthew, what's your wrap up piece of advice for our listeners?
Well, I don't know. I think it's over a long period of time where I've sort of developed this philosophy, but I've kind of always told everyone that basically in order to get like the career that you always want, like it takes three things. It's a third who you know, it's a third, you know, your skills, and a third, and I'm going to call it, I guess, getting a lucky break of some kind. I used to say that it was luck, but actually upon thinking about it more, I've determined it's more like getting a lucky break. And to get a lucky break, you can create your own luck. You can be doing things like working on your art, you know, like we've talked about here, you know, inserting yourself into new opportunities. You know, I, like David talked about, like, you know, doing a stand-up show and, you know, finding a level of being discovered to some extent. So I think those are like the three things that you always need to be working on at all times is, you know, working on who you know and maintaining that community of who you know, your skill, you know, what you do really well, and a third of creating opportunities so that you can get a break that helps you then get to the next level. And actually, upon listening to this conversation, I would maybe also add, maybe I got to make another slice of this pie chart, like for working on yourself, you know, and knowing who you are authentically and having a good work-life balance. So maybe I have to go back and refine this this whole pie chart.
I think your partner will be very happy about that addition to your pie chart.
Definitely.
Yeah. David?
I think the best piece of advice I ever got was about not sending your writing in before it was ready, not sending your work in before it was ready, which I still think is very true.
Okay.
There's no rush. It's not a race. Everyone will know. Like for the people who just graduated, somebody in your class already has a job somewhere, and they've probably told you about it 100 times, and good for them. But that doesn't mean that you have to have a job right away in your field. You can take your time and watch. If you want to work in movies or TV, watch as many movies as you can and TV shows as you can. And I think the biggest thing that has helped me in my career is you have to, I think, trust that what your unique perspective is on the world has value, and don't worry about writing a show like somebody else's show or writing a book like somebody else's book. We already have, that already exists. And yeah, people like that, but they don't know, the thing that you're creating hasn't existed yet. So people, you don't know if people are going to like it or not. And I think the best thing you can do is just make something that is as much you and uniquely you as you can.
Okay. Tristian?
Yeah, so I think my advice, if I can give it, direct it towards like young animators or young filmmakers. I'm assuming there are many artistic people here today, especially now with the coronavirus, and we don't know what's happening with our economic futures and all these plans. Number one, take care of yourself, stay safe, make sure that you're keeping healthy and clean so that together as a nation, we can all get through this pandemic. Make sure you have all that taken care of, like first, before you start worrying about your career. But you know, if you're an artist, and yes, you should be drawing a lot, don't stay inside and draw every day. Try to go and find like-minded people. If it's you can use Slack to join artistic communities, or get a bunch of friends together in a group chat. And then eventually you can go to museums or movies with people, and really discuss people's work at a film festival, share your work with them. When you get involved in that like creative filmmaking process, discussing that with people, that'll bring out the networking relationships further in the future.
Okay. And Estefania, your piece of advice?
That's everything that everybody said. It's a beautiful, really well put. My whole thing, I think, would be like, never stop learning. There's always something that you can learn, something that you can be more valuable. And also, not because you learn it means that it's going to stay consistent, especially for post people. You have to continuously update your skills. If you knew Premiere or Final Cut, we graduated with Final Cut. That's not a thing anymore. Like, you have to continuously.
We learned Steenbeck editing on
that was
on millimeter film,
and we got cuts from the splicer. It's great. But yeah, just continuously keep updating the skills. Check out a library card. You can get lynda.com for free, and that has a wealth of everything. And I'm not just like go into the post-production part, but also learn the other stuff too. There's communication skills. There's like how to do like maybe other things that are not related to the field that would add value. I took a couple of management courses from Lynda, and I did communication, things that were not related. I took an Illustrator class, and that ended up helping me. So yeah, check out like the free options, especially during the crisis. There are free options out there to continuously update your skills and improve your skills. And that's, the more you put in that resume in terms of skills, the more people are looking at it. And I know, because at some point I had the role of looking through people's resumes to make my team. And I was looking at the skills like, what do you know how to do? Because we need somebody to do everything. It's not anymore. Like back in the day, it was like, oh, you're a producer, you only knew how to do this, and you're an editor and you only know how to do this. Now they want a predator, and they want a predator that can shoot, and a predator that can do this, and the slashes keep getting added onto your jobs. So
Although I think it's frightening that you just described yourself as a predator. That's like, you know, it's like worrisome. But I hadn't heard that term before. It's clever, but also sort of slightly frightening. But
but that's actually a common term now.
They
want, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was invented, and it was a whole thing. Yeah.
Oh really? I missed that. And
yeah, it's a producer editor, and I think they're probably adding even more to it to make it sound like thing.
Predatographer.
Back in our day, we used to have a separate producer and a separate editor.
Yeah.
Back in olden times. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I think we've hit most of the questions either directly or indirectly. So, and I know we've all been on Zoom for a long time. It feels like I've been on Zoom my entire life. But again, I want to thank my partners in this, Joanna and Lily, and all the folks at Tisch who helped, and at Team NYU LA who helped put this together. I really want to thank our panelists. I found this conversation, I hoped for lively. It was lively. I thought that you all brought your own unique takes to the table and had very valuable information. And if I can sum up, I would say that it kind of comes back to some of the things I talked about in the beginning. When you're trying to chart a creative career, whether it's through the time of a recession or just in normal times, you still need the same things. You need to have determination, you need to have flexibility, you need to have resilience. I remember at the 2008 writer's strike, being picketing outside of Fox along with my friend Alexi Hawley, who's the showrunner of The Rookie now. And I was like, how long do you think we're going to be, picketing? And he was like, I don't know, we're writers. We get told no 10 times before breakfast, right? So, let them keep saying no. And that always stuck with me, because that idea of, you are told as a writer no 10 times before breakfast. And so mostly, like having that resilience to figure out how to keep going is a really valuable thing. I also believe really diving into your authenticity. One of the questions that we didn't get to, which was about building your personal brand. And I would just say that, my brand, is author, filmmaker, educator. And it's all the things I do. It's what's listed on my website. It's, so it's put on my cards, because I do all three of those things. And that's because in the course of building my career, I became true to all of those things. I mean, the novelist part of my life is a later part of the life. I published my first book in 2016. But that's been a great addition. And then again, just in terms of resilience, just wrap up with a personal story. I've worked as a film and TV producer and writer, for my whole career. The only reason I wrote a book is because, frankly, I was feeling too female and too old when I went into meetings, and I began to feel like I was getting aged out, and that I was dealing with sexism, which there had always been a component of. And so I had always wanted to write a book, and I decided I was going to do that. And I committed 1 day a week, just Sundays, to writing a book. And I thought, well, this maybe never will see the light of day, but if it does, I own the IP, right? So that was sort of my thinking. And so when I didn't even tell anyone I was doing it, because I didn't want anyone to come in and say what's happening with that book and me, have no answer. But I finished it. I gave it to a few friends, again, my friends, because I'd been working in the industry in a long time, we're the industry. But within 3 weeks, I had a top New York literary agent. She sold my book at Random House to Random House. I won a 2-book deal. I subsequently sold that first book to Stars, where I adapted it for the pilot. And I sold my second 2 books to ITV, and I'm currently adapting the pilot for those, because that's a series. That reinvention by becoming a novelist, which took me back into the television game, also allowed me this year to sell my first original pilot. Just in terms of reinvention, right now I have a 4th book, which I'm going to just promote briefly, called Convince Me, coming out in August, which the first line of which is, this book is for everyone who's sick and tired of the fucking liars and their fucking lies. So there you have it. I think I predict a bestseller. Anyway, so I tell that story because, again, in terms of talking about how to be flexible and how to pivot and also keep utilizing your skills, I wrote that first book because I was losing my love of writing, and I didn't want that to happen. And so that was really my goal going in, was to keep developing my craft and not losing something that I had loved. And what it did was it succeeded in reinventing me as a writer at a whole other and higher level in the television business. So I think that kind of commitment to yourself, that the commitment to taking self-care of yourself, and also to taking care of your collective. And I think a lot of our panelists talked about that today, answering the call for a friend who needed graphics or a line producer or needed something read and notes on or something looked at. I think that this is how you build what I like to call the good karma wheel, which I do believe ultimately pays you back. Not always when you want it to, not always in the immediate moment, but eventually you begin to have favors that you can call in. Anyway, once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. This webinar will be posted on the NYU Alumni Relations page, this recording. It'll probably take a couple of days for it to get up. But thank you again to our panelists, to my partners, and to our attendees.
Thank you, Nina. Everyone was so smart on this panel. Well done, everyone.
I know. I've only been with NYU a year,
meet you
but
guys.
I love this community. So, thank you, guys.
It was such a pleasure.